All right. I think it's noon. So, are you ready? All right. Hello. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. I am Jennifer Vanette, your outreach coordinator, and I'm excited to welcome you all here today. A couple of housekeeping announcements before we begin. And my regulars are like, I'm so used to this, I know it. But we want everyone welcome. So, I will tell you that if you need a restroom, there is one just out that door. You're welcome to help yourself at any point to refreshments on the back table. I think there's some sweet treats and a little bit of coffee and water back there. Just help yourself as you need it. We're fairly low key and casual like that around here, so I don't think Scott will mind if you have a coffee craving in the middle. Um, our This is our last lunch and learn of 2023. Believe it or not, like wow. And what a great way to conclude. I'll talk about him in a moment. But just to remind you, then we will be going strong in 2024. So sticking with those second and fourth Tuesdays. That would make our next lunch and learn January 9th. And we will have Dave Slaggert, who is going to talk about a book that he'll have available for pre-order, that's being published, called Remembering the Trojans and Lumberjacks, Michigan's Greatest High School Rivalry. We are already taking sides. I love it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in that. And so I hope you'll join us, and please have safe and happy holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here. I should tell you, actually, you could just come right back on Thursday. We have an exhibit opening for our traveling exhibit, Signs of the Times, which is a political poster exhibit. It's looking from 1844 to 2012. And it's looking at the change over time and how political posters were used in campaigning. So if you're into art, you can look at it from an art perspective. If you're into political history, you can kind of see those catchphrases and the ways they change their pitch to the voters over time. It's very interesting. We've already been seeing them come out of the crates, and it's really fascinating. That exhibit will be open through January 19th. So we'll do an opening this Thursday from 5 to 7. You can drop in. We'll have a little bit of treats. Sandy Schwan will be making German star ornament things, like paper folding. You're welcome to do that with her as well. Okay, so that's Thursday. So come see us then. Then go off for various holiday festivities and travels and fun and be safe, and then come back and see us in January. Okay. All right. Now today, I'm excited to welcome my friend Scott Seeburger, who is a great friend of the museum. He's been here many times before. Thanks to being retired from, it's Corning, right?
South Corning, yep.
Yeah, so thanks to him being retired, but yet very active in our from him. I do want to draw your attention. Part of the reason I wanted to get him in here this month is because you still have another week to go see an exhibit that he has worked with Grace A. Dow Library in Midland. And it's titled Meet Me After the Show, but it's his posters, cinema posters over time. And I went on opening night, and I've seen it one other time since. It's a really intriguing exhibit of posters. So if you have time to hop over to Midland, I highly encourage you to do that. So you have until December 18th during the library's hours. And then you're hosting movies too, right?
Yeah.
Did you want
to? I'll mention that.
Okay, he's going to mention that part because I don't remember all the details. I just know it comes up on my Facebook sometimes. So anyway, we're really happy to have you here. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Jen.
And I will turn it over to you for some early cinema.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to look at early cinema. What does cinema mean? That's so European. Now, this is a stream of conscious kind of a presentation. Normally, I'm extremely well. Films. So the library asked me, could you develop a little film series that could go with it, dealing with the classic era of films, 1915 to 1970 is about the range. And this was the year, the studio years, MGM, Paramount, Columbia, all those great studios. That was their big era. So I said, okay. And I put together, and I mean, it's an A-list. There wasn't a loser in the bunch. It was all top stuff. And I tripled the audience because I narrate and I do the open for every film, and I try to make the film relevant to today's, what's going on today, or from a historical perspective. And we've kind of built friendships with this group. And now they're saying, well, can you do January and February, get the year started off? I said, no. But what's exciting is you get to see these old films on the big screen because they're the only library in the Great Lakes Bay region that has their own theater. It's a little boring. They call it the auditorium. They should really give it a name, the Bijou, Midlands Bijou or something.
Seeburger Theater.
Well, I'd be happy to accept that honor. And their equipment isn't up to date, but it's going to be. And so this has been a real test, showing these old films, and I think I've delighted the audiences. Am I up front too close? I'm getting a little close. Okay. That my wife says that to me all the time. Back off, please. She's back there, and Sandy's my wife. She's always lets me know how I did. So I was interested as a kid, 13 years old. I was riding my bicycle in the summertime every day to the Grace A. Dow Library, reading about 3 subjects. I was interested in 3 things. How did television get started? 1948-49. What about radio? Radio just celebrated its centennial, 1922. And then I got interested, the subject I was most interested in was motion pictures. When did that start? Do you know the year? The first time a film was projected to an audience? Anyone know? 1895. December 1895. And of course the old joke is, 2 guys are talking. One guy asks the other guy, well, why did you get into radio? He says, because I have a face for radio. And then the other guy asks, well, why did you get into films? Because I have a voice for silent films. This is the way people thought back in the 1920s. So I wanted to know about this, and I did get my undergraduate degree in broadcast and cinematic arts, but they didn't get into any of the things I'm talking about today. I'm going back. I mean, to day one, I'm going back on this presentation. Paris, France, December 1895, they showed the first film, and it wowed the audience. They couldn't believe it. Now, Thomas Edison was following things. It was the Lumiere brothers, by the way. They developed photographic equipment in France. And they were interested in motion. Could they make motion happen? So a Michigander by the name of Thomas Edison, born in Port Huron, was also really interested in this. And he was following what was happening in Europe. He went over there in the 1880s and was sharing ideas. And by the way, I'm real brief on the names because there's so many names involved in the development of film, but these are 2 of the major ones. So 1896, Thomas Edison puts out his first films in the United States. And they're on the East Coast. And Edison had the idea, he didn't know if it was going to go projected on a screen. He thought maybe it might best work as a kinetoscope, which was a big box. And it was a coin-operated machine, and you came in, you slid your nickel in, and then you put your head down to a viewer, and you saw a movie. They did do well. And he set up kinetoscope parlors, they were called. Well, the projected version was more powerful. The presentation was much more powerful. So that's where he went. So if this is all working, and we don't know if it's going to work totally, we're going to show this film, this first film, called The Kiss. This was made by Black Maria Studios in New Jersey, owned by Thomas Edison. And what happened was Edison saw a live performance on Broadway called The Widow Jones. It was a musical. And the very last scene, two people were kissing. It was a prolonged kiss. Edison says, I think that'd make a good movie. So he makes this film, and I'm going to have to fast forward out of this a little bit. That's my grandfather. This is another piece of the story. My grandfather owned one of the first two silent movie houses in Midland, Michigan. And I can feel him in the room right now. I'm not kidding. He would have been pretty thrilled. He knew a lot about early film. And I will be telling the story of this poster is tied into Bart Laughlin a lot. And this was his theater. And when they tore down to build those $1 million condominiums downtown Midland that Shaheen built, they were tearing it down. There was Bart's Mecca. There was signage up on the side of the building. They tore it down. And this was just like 5-6 years ago when this happened. So we got quite a kick out of that. But this is the kiss, and let's see if it's all going to work. So it should be sound. I can hear it, but it needs to be louder. I think it's just the computer needs to be turned up. There, I got the audio going. Well, you saw the first, or one of the very first motion pictures. How did you feel about that? I felt it dragged in the middle a little bit, and it picked up towards the end. If anyone needs to use a restroom now, we can take a break now after that long. This was the Gone with the Wind of 1896, this film. And that's what those films were like. They were more like actualities. They were a steady camera. It never moved. And it just recorded things. And it was on a loop. This film, 20 seconds long, and it was a big hit. How did you think the public reacted to that film? They were in shock. It was scandalous. They were literally in shock. It was shown in variety and vaudeville theaters. And this was the first time a kiss had ever been filmed. Edison described the film. They get ready to kiss, he said. They begin to kiss. They kiss and they kiss and they kiss in a way that brings the house down every time. That was Edison's quote. Well, it got a huge, strong reaction. The Catholic Church denounced it as shocking and obscene. The church called for censorship. Many newspapers were in an uproar. One writer said, the spectacle of a prolonged pasturing on each other's lips was beastly enough in size on stage, but magnified to gargantuan portions, it's absolutely disgusting. And then it produced imitators, other kinds of kisses. One in particular that seemed to interest America were when African Americans kiss. I don't know if they I just wanted to see people kissing after this film. And this was the start. So I will go to the next film. So the way films developed then, in 1903, the Great Train Robbery was the big film in the United States. It told a story. It was called a narrative film. It wasn't very long. It showed these cowboys chasing down a train. They got the train to stop. They got the people off the train. They had some fights in that process, but they got the people off the train. They took their money and rode away. That was the film. But it told a story, and that was a big breakthrough. But just to show you, I mean, the development of the film was really international. So you've got to go to, in my opinion, Great Britain for this next one. called Rescued by Rover. And this film was, well, I'll just show it to you. It's Rescued by Rover. It's 7 minutes long. And which way do I, this way? 1905.
From 1904, Hepworth
Can't hear the narration.
the actual direction of his films to others, as was the case for the famous Rescued by Rover, directed by Lewin Fitzhayman. This is notable for its very polished staging and smooth cutting, as well as for the lighting of the attic set. Innovative use of arc lighting was a feature of Hepworth films in 1905. The Hepworth family and their dog play the family in the film.
It's about an abduction. And the baby is being abducted now. Sorry. Father's distraught. The dog's getting his attention. The guy that made this film is in that role of the father. Baby's back home. Everybody's happy. That was Rescued by Rover.
I can leave your presentation and try to fix the sound, or we can just carry on.
Well, I'm going to chat for a couple of minutes, so you can do whatever you want. Jen's trying to make the audio stable. Oh, okay. Um, and so the old woman who stole the baby and the soldier who were in this film were both paid actors, the first two paid actors in the history of cinema. I'm telling you, Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, give thanks to them. You know, they've been going to the bank for a long time. Um, so there are some directing achievements that are notable about this film. One is the lighting. Hepworth not only told a very sophisticated story by 1905 standards, even more sophisticated than the Great Train Robbery, but he used lighting in a creative way. Hard to tell because it's so old, but that was an achievement. But the big one, as you started to mention, to train that dog was the star of the film. And so Rover set everything up for Rin Tin Tin, Lassie, Benji, all these other dogs that have become famous in films. But Rover was the first one, even though Rover wasn't his real name. In fact, Rover was an extremely, extremely obscure name. And yet it became internationally known because of this film. And now we know the dog Rover, they're one and the same. It's because of this film. Now, this film had to be remade 4 times because in those days they didn't have the technology where you could just reproduce copies forever and ever. And it was an international sensation. People loved this. Tom Tromley's in the back. Hi, Tom. I was thinking about when did things come to Saginaw? Because in 1895 it was Paris. In 1896 it got to the United States. And according to Tom Tromley's research, when we did the Silver Screens exhibit, 1897, right? In the park. That's how fast films were moving. I mean, people were fascinated by it. And there used to be stories about, people couldn't believe it, and they saw this movie on the big screen, and they went screaming, running out of the... That really didn't happen, but they were wowed. For sure, they were wowed. So, to bring you into the 1920s, which is a great era for silent films, I have a poster. It's called The Covered Wagon. And The Covered Wagon was made in 1922. I never exhibit this poster because it took me 30 years to find it. It is extremely rare, this poster. Can you believe that's 101 years old? I mean, and that's all the posters I have in at the Grace Dow. Everybody says the same thing. I can't believe that poster is so old. They're all virtually 80 years or 60 years or older. But so The Covered Wagon is an important film. When my grandfather ran the movie house in Midland, he showed The Covered Wagon, and he said this was the film that drew the biggest reaction of all of them. in his years in the 1920s. And indeed, this was one of the 10 biggest films of the decade of the 1920s. It was a huge film. And it's notable because it was the first film to use Native American Indians playing Native Americans in the film. Before that, it was always white people. Who do you think made that happen? Anyone want to take a guess? Fred Reif, my author, friend, musician, he knows. He brought some material on the guy. Tim McCoy, Saginaw-born Tim McCoy, allowed it to happen for Native American Indians to be in their first film ever. And McCoy had a distinguished history. He grew up in Saginaw. Very well-read person. His father was the police chief of town. His father had a big library. His father made sure that he read the classics. Tim tried to read the nickel, comic-type books about westerns. No, his father made sure that he read good literature. And Tim McCoy was a very literate person. And so he was out, Tim McCoy left home. His family thought he was going to be a priest in the Catholic Church. He was raised in the Catholic Church. And Tim had other ideas. He snuck off at 17 years old, left Saginaw with a few coins in his pocket, didn't know where he was going. He knew one thing. He was going west to be a cowboy. And I do a whole talk on McCoy. So McCoy did not have prejudice like so many people in America did about Native Americans, because they were treated terribly. But Tim McCoy, he watched their universal language they developed, which was hand signals and sign language. He became friendly with them. He greeted them wherever he went out west. This was something quite unusual. A lot of people didn't treat him so well. So McCoy slowly got invited into being part of their ceremonies, to have powwows, to have conversation, and he studied their culture, he studied their language, and he studied their spirituality. They really, in his view, didn't have a religion. They had a certain spirituality to them, and he so respected that. And so they trusted him, and he trusted them. And he was working in a pretty big government job out in Cheyenne, Wyoming, when James Cruz, who was the director of this film, wanted to make this film, The Covered Wagon. He had a lot of money. He had a big budget. Paramount Studios was the #1 film company in America in the 1920s, and my grandfather Bart had the Paramount contract at Bart's Mecca Theater in Midland. And so that's why he got first crack at this. And so Cruz says, how can I make this happen? We know one person in this country that might be able to make it happen. His name is Tim McCoy. Cruz sends his delegate, and first thing you know, McCoy is negotiating the contract, every aspect of it, and he made sure Native Americans got a really good deal on that. In fact, it was some of the best money they've ever seen, maybe the best money they'd seen in their lifetime. And after, the film was a smash, the Native American Indians were such a hit. The unfortunate thing was, film still treated them like savages. This stuff. I mean, they were treated like savages. They weren't treated, it wasn't a realistic presentation of them. But Native Americans were getting paid well, and they had broken into films, so that was good. Native American Indians, after this film, could negotiate their own contracts. McCoy showed them everything, taught them what he did, what to think about. And this woman right here, Lois Wilson, very unusual in a film poster to have Lois Wilson so prominently featured in such a power position in the film. She became so enamored with Native American Indians that her philanthropic experts for the rest of her, the work she did in philanthropic areas was always to benefit the Native American. She did a lot to help them out. She'd never met him before, and she was so impressed with the people. Now, what's interesting, I had an interesting question about this poster. On all those black and white movies, because that's all they made in those days, were black and whites, did they always have color posters? Just about. By far, the vast majority of the posters in those days were in color. And the poster has gone with the motion picture from day one. In 1895, when they showed the very first film, they had a poster. Edison used posters. Edison dictated the size of the one sheet, which is the most important poster, 27 by 41. He's the one that dictated the size. And this is the poster size I feature. All of my posters actually were in lobbies of theaters. And this is no different. So they've all had to be restored. They don't just look like this. They have to have work on them because, they pinned them up, and then they'd take it down, they'd send it to the next theater, and they were in rough shape by the end of the tour. This film didn't make it. This film was made in 22. This film didn't make it to Midland until 1925 because not everything happened instantaneously. It was on like a bicycle thing. It moved from one location to the next. So here's the tragedy. These two films that you've just seen, it's remarkable we still have them. And they've been digitally captured. Because so many of the films are lost from up through the late 1920s. They were on nitrate. And not only was that extremely flammable, it was chemically breaking down day by day. It did not last. It was never meant to last. They threw the negatives out and things, after the film. So 80% are gone. Tom Mix was the most popular cowboy star up through about 1930. Tom Mix made almost 300 films. There's only a handful of them left. I mean, it's so sad. And one of them just got resurrected and put on Blu-ray. The new technology, the Blu-ray 4K, but particularly Blu-ray, has benefited the old films so much because those old films need to be cleaned up. There's all kinds of restoration products that they use to clean it. They use AI to fill in dead spots. So I couldn't believe it. This film was lost for decades. Now, in a film festival, maybe in LA, they would show a piece. Someone would own 20 minutes of the film and they would show it just so you could see a little piece of the film. 3 or 4 years ago, it comes out on Blu-ray. And I'm going, what? This is unbelievable. But what happened was somebody in Germany had a piece of the film. Someone in LA had a piece of the film. Another piece of the film was in Canada. They got it all together and they used all this incredible new technology so that they could release the covered wagon. If you ever want to show the film at the, here at the castle, I love the castle, by the way. I'd be happy to loan it out. It's just unbelievable that we still have this film. The film is not that great. Sorry, it's just not that outstanding. But it was big. It was a big budgeted film, and there were 6 or 7 different film posters that they made of the one sheet, and I just got one of them. There's 5 or 6 other with different art on it. Yes. I know there is a cost total on it. It was in the hundreds of thousands, and I believe maybe like 400,000 or 500,000. Yeah, that was a big budget, for those films. But they had a gigantic cast, and they shot one of the scenes they shot out. I think it was in Montana or Wyoming. They had a fierce snowstorm, and James Cruz liked the effect of a snowstorm, so he shot right through it. And all the actors, the Indians, the other actors, all had to participate in the film as he captured the snowstorm. So, yeah, it was a big budget. And so that's the story. We'll try you want to try the third film? We'll hope and pray that it works. This film is 19 minutes long. And we're going to advance the timetable now 15 years. This is the last thing I'm showing. And just to give you a little bit of timeliness, D.W. Griffith made Birth of a Nation in 1915. And that film had some issues with it. Yeah, racism being number one. You're familiar with it? Yeah. At the time, and you know, it's funny, D.W. Griffith, a great director, didn't realize at the time he was making such a racist film. That's my take. I mean, he was kind of, really? Yeah, I mean, I guess he thought he was depicting the history of the U.S. correctly. But there was definitely a racist flavor to the film. So he followed up with Intolerance and tried to soothe that a little bit, but it affected his career forever. But he was caught dumbstruck, you know, in 1915. He didn't think it wasn't the general public so much that reacted as it was the film experts and the people that knew film and the historians. You know, they said, you didn't present it right. So he got it wrong. And but he was a great filmmaker, and that was the film, as so many have said, D.W. Griffith was the guy who taught us how to make films. There were no textbooks or college classes or seminars on how to make these things. They went as they just had to learn from others, and D.W. Griffith was important. So we moved to the 20s, and that's a great era for comedy. Laurel and Hardy were big in the 20s, separately, and then they came together. And there was Harry Langdon and Harold Lloyd and Fatty Arbuckle and the legendary Charlie Chaplin. But also there was Buster Keaton. And Buster Keaton in 1920, like so many comedians, like Chaplin all the way up through Jerry Lewis and Woody Allen and others, they want to have control of their film. Because they have these jokes and they want to present the humor in a certain way. And the studios say, we don't have time to do all that. Or they said, just stick to the script. It really drove comedians crazy. So Buster Keaton took responsibility for his own film. And this is called 1 Week. It's 19 minutes. It's totally produced by Keaton. And it's about a couple that gets married. And as a wedding gift, they get a kit for a home. And, you know, buying kits for a home, that was not uncommon. Henry Ford cranked the automobiles off the assembly line, but he also did kits for homes. And so this is the story of a man who's building his first home, his love nest for he and his wife, and everything goes wrong. I hope we can hear the sound because the piano playing's good. Oh, I gotta do it. Well, that's good. And when this film concludes, I'll take questions. such a physical person, even as a child. And that scene that was in there where the house comes down on him and he's just standing there like, what's happening? And he's in the doorway and nothing harms him. No one had ever attempted anything like that. They thought he was crazy. They used the term madman. He was crazy to attempt a scene like that. And when they shot it and it worked and he didn't get hurt, the cameraman passed out because he thought sure this was going to be the end of Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton did that scene 2 more times in his film career, only a little more elaborately. It was an ongoing joke. He was a remarkable person, as all those comedians were. So I'm happy to take Q&A. Do you want to wrap it up, Jen?
We are right at noon, so if there are a couple of questions, we can probably take those, but if you have other engagements, we definitely want to finish up, or if
Was it okay? Yes.
How come you aren't back at the college teaching?
Well,